Lesson 17, Part 1A, the present active imperative. Present active imperative equals first stem plus epsilon plus imperative A endings. Potentially that could be an epsilon omicron, but there's no endings that start with a mu or nu, so it ends up being just epsilons. So here are the forms. You'll notice there are no first persons because I'm not commanding myself to do something and I'm not commanding a group that I'm a part of. We've seen before the hortatory subjunctive or exhortations for a group that we're included in. Some languages will use the imperative for that, but Greek does not, English does not either. So there's no first persons for imperatives. Then we have blepe, blepeto, blepete, blepetosan. But those are the four forms. These two we would just translate as look, because we don't make a distinction between the singular and plural in English. And then he must look and they must look. You could say see as well, see, but it sounds better in English as look than see. Note there are no first persons in the imperative. The present active imperative second plural is identical to the present active indicative first plural or second plural. So we need to start marking that one in our parsing as well, or just getting those wrong if we need to. But do note that's the exact same form, so it can be unclear. Default to, when you're translating, default to the indicative unless the indicative doesn't make sense in the context. Then if that's the case, switch over to imperative. Now, unfortunately, that means that for contract verbs that end in AO and AO, the present active imperative, present active indicative, present active subjunctive, and present active imperative second plural are all identical because the subjunctives were the same as the indicatives for the AO and AOs in all six forms. So here, because this is also identical to that, it's also identical to that. Isn't this great? The imperative endings are different, so we'll want to memorize them. So far we've had endings that are primary A, primary B, secondary A, and secondary B. Now we have the imperative A endings, which are this. Of course, nothing in the first person, either nothing, on, or T. Here we're using the nothing form. I believe it's when we get over to the aorist and aorist passive that we'll use the on and the T. Then we have a toe, te, and tosan. The toe and the tosan are actually going to be very similar. The B form is tho and thosan. So that extra ending there, we're used to seeing an omega as an ending, but not toe as an ending. And then tosan, we're used to seeing san as an ending, but again, not with the tau in there and the omega. So those are going to be dead giveaways that you have an imperative, just whether or not you have an A imperative or a B imperative, if it's toe and tosan or tho and thosan. So those are pretty easy to identify. The te is going to be absolutely identical. The question is going to be if you get one of these second person singulars, they can be a little bit difficult because the endings look like other endings as well. So a me in the present active imperative is isti, esto, este, and estosan. So these three here are pretty much what we would expect, just with a sigma instead of a mu, but we've seen lots of sigmas in AME before. And then this isti is crazy weird. So make sure you memorize that one. So we've got be, he must be, and they must be. Now, contract verbs, for some reason, get an extra iota. You don't really have to memorize that. Just know that that's if you see it, you're trying to figure out what on earth is going on, they get an extra iota. I don't know why, they just do. So summary, present active imperative is first stem plus epsilon plus imperative A endings. The present active imperative second plural is identical to the present active indicative second plural. And so for contract verbs that end in AO and AO, the present active indicative, present active subjunctive, and present active imperative second plurals are all identical, and we need to learn the new endings.